How was I able to identify yung property ko as a good deal? Tapos, di ba, nagsunod-sunod yon. So, let's proceed. Kayo, ano gusto nyo? Flipping? Rental? Gusto nyo lang magkaroon ng property for your own use? Kailangan well-defined. Otherwise, hindi nyo alam anong property ang bagay sa inyo. Ako, ang goal ko noon, buy and sell. Kasi, nisip ko noon, I would rather flip muna para maka-raise ng capital for the next deals. Kasi kung renta, masyadong matagal. So, nag-flip ako ng mga properties and ang target ko, ito, after repair value, yung estimated market value, after ko siya ma-renovate, dapat, pag kinompare ko sa selling price ng bank, mas mura yung selling price ng bank by 40%. So, kung 1 million, dapat mabili ko siya around 600,000. So, less 40%. Yun yung ballpark estimate. Kasi, pag 40% below, yung allowance na yan, I believe it's good enough to have at least 20% net profit na. So, yun yung basis ko kung bakit ko binili yung property. So, binili ko siya at 1.194 million. How do I know good deal yan? In that particular location, 9,500 per square meter ang selling price ng mga lote. During that time, yun yung analysis ko. Tapos, ang cost to construct ng bagong bahay, 18,000 per square meter. Yun yung estimate ko. Kasi, bakit ko ginagawa to? Para malaman ko, baka mas mura pa, bumili na lang ng lote at mag-construct, baka mas mura pa yun. Kasi kung mas mura yun, ano yung sabihin nun? Bad deal yun. Pero hindi. If I was going to construct a new property and buy the vacant lot na katumbas nun, it would be 1.8 million. So, meron akong allowance na 610,000. Okay lang, naiintindihan? Okay. So, ang laki ng allowance, kaso, hindi siya 40% below. 33% below lang siya. Sabi ko, 33%, 40%, pwede na. Pwede na. Hindi naman kasi exact science. So, binili ko siya. Ano nangyari? Ay, by the way, baka sa inyo, meron dito gusto rental property. Pag rental property, how do you know kung may potential siya? Ang tawag nila sa US, 1% rule, 2% rule. Sa atin, 1% rule. Mas applicable based on the average. Meaning, kung ano yung monthly rent, i-divide mo ng total selling price, pag more than 1%, pwede siya. Hindi ibig sabihin, automatic, good deal siya. Ibig sabihin lang, may potential. So, yun yung pag-rentals naman. Okay? Next step, alam ko na good deal siya. How do I proceed? Kailangan ko talaga i-manage yung pera ko so I can finance this deal. Investing is useless if you can't manage money. Anong example niyan? Kunyari, kumita ako ng marami, tapos hindi ako financially literate. Gagastusin ko ng pera. Walang saysay. Yung example ko, yung mga tumatama sa loto na nauubos yun, gano'n. Pareho lang. And I totally believe financial literacy is a prerequisite to investing in real estate. Kaya ako, saludo ako sa 8990 Holdings. As far as I know, they're the only developer that require buyers to attend a financial literacy seminar. Bakit importante yan? Kasi pag wala niyan, ano mangyayari? Maubusan ng pera, hindi matutuloy yung contract, makakancel ng contract, or kung may bank financing yan, foreclosure ang mangyayari. Ito, hindi kasi pinag-uusapan ko eh. Dapat alam yan ng lahat ng bibili. And my money should be enough, bago ko bilhin, it should be enough for my current expenses. Actually, meron akong pag-ibig loan before ko binili itong property. So, meron akong ibang obligation. Meron akong dapat tinatabi for the savings. Meron akong dapat para sa emergency funds, insurance, and so on and so forth. And, syempre, I have to have enough money for the down payment and my monthly amortizations. Of course, yung repairs. Medyo sumablay ako sa repairs. Estimate ko 30,000. Yung actual 130,000. Pero okay lang. Since yung allowance ko napakalaki, kumita pa rin. Siyempre yung taxes. Next, ang tanong, how much can I afford? For foreclosed properties, ang typical is ang down payment na minimum 10 to 20%. For this particular property, 20%. Monthly amortization depends on the terms. And the maximum monthly amortization is 40% of the gross monthly income. Again, dapat sumunod kayo dito. You should not over-leverage. Kunyari, kita mo 20,000 a month. Bibili ka ba ng property na 20,000 a month ang monthly amortization? Pwede yun kung hindi ka kumakain. Kumakain ka. Kung may pamilya ka, meron kang bahay na binabayaran, syempre kailangan may allowance. 40% na yung na-determine ng mga banks, so let's stick to that. So, example, balik tayo doon sa property ko. I bought it for 1.197 million at 20% down payment, payable in 10 years at 12% annual interest rate. Ang tanong, how much is my down payment, monthly amortization, and can I really afford it? Ako meron akong tool, actually kahit anong mortgage calculator, kaya yan ibigay. Ako ito yung nasa site ko, sabihin ko na lang kasi baka maliit. Selling price 1.194, down payment 20%, for a 10-year loan, interest rate at 12%, ang kailangan kong gross monthly income, 34,200 plus. Pero yung monthly amortization, 13,704 lang. So may allowance. Meron akong extra money for my other obligations. Dapat ganun. Otherwise, pag may nagkaroon ng problema, nagipit, wala, foreclose yan. So that's how you determine how much money do you need. Siyempre, ipa-factor in mo rin yung repairs, taxes, etc. And then, okay na siya. I can afford it. Bibiling ko na ba? Hindi pa. Dapat mag-due diligence. Ano ba ang due diligence? I have to answer. Is it illegally occupied? Meron bang squatter doon? Yung former owner ba nandun? Ako, rule ko, pag yung former owner nandun, respeto na lang. I move on to a next property. And I hope na maayos nila. Any lease pendants, meron bang pending court case? Meron bang title? Meron bang tax declaration? Consolidated ba? Nakapangalan na ba sa bangko? Meron bang kailangan bayaran sa kuryente, sa tubig, sa HOA? Ako swerte ko sa property to, lahat niyan babayaran ng bangko. So, isa yun, dapat i-check nyo. Magkano yung taxes, magkano yung transfer cost, ano yan? CWT, DST, transfer tax, registration fee, lahat nun. Hindi ko siyempre pwede explain kasi maubos yung time. Pero, you have an idea ano yung mga magkukos. Kasi kung hindi consider yan, baka mamaya, investor ako pero lugi pala. Dapat alam nyo to. And physical, legal, financial aspects, okay pa siya. Of course, yung repair estimates kailangan accurate din. Sabi ko nga, mali ako, 30,000, yung pala actual 130,000. So in summary, here are the steps. Tatlo lang. Begin with the end in mind. Kailangan alam nyo yung gusto nyo gawin. Get your finances in order and do your due diligence. And that's the only time that you can consider buying that investment. Okay?